All right, recording started. Hey everyone, welcome to Time to Thrive. This is your host, Bethany Meadows. Small business owners tend to play a lot of different roles in their companies. They shoulder the stress and responsibility of the company's success or failure. For many entrepreneurs, this translates to chaos and uncertainty. Our guest today preaches the gospel that small business owners are vital to our economy while teaching business owners that it doesn't have to feel like riding out a tornado. Kerry-Ann Powell is a global business strategist, speaker, and champion of small and medium-sized businesses. She boasts over 20 years' experience as a Washington, D.C. attorney, lobbyist, and fundraiser. And this positions her as an authority on what it takes to strategically succeed while confronting difficult obstacles. After raising $120 million to build the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, she launched her strategic business and consulting firm, Trafalgar Strategies. She and her team advise business owners from various industries and countries on creating strategies, systems, and mindsets to thrive in business and in life. Welcome to the show, Kerry-Ann.
Thank you, Bethany. What a joy to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I always, it's always fun when I get a fellow marketing strategy person on the show. We get a little carried away.
Yeah,
all right.
You got
it. We're going to have you pick a number between 1 and 5, and that's going to determine your super random question.
Lucky 7.
Between 1 and 5.
Oh, 5. Look at me. I don't even know how to count. 3.
3. Okay. What's the strangest thing you've ever seen in the middle of the road?
It really shouldn't be strange, but, an alligator. We were driving down Alligator Alley. My sister and I, we went to university in Florida, and we were driving from Tampa down to Fort Lauderdale, and my parents lived there. And, we had to stop to pee, and there wasn't a lot of those days. I don't know how nowadays, but those days there weren't many rest
there
areas.
Still is nothing in Alligator Alley.
So we had to stop and, doing the side of the road. And yep, as we were like squatting, there is an alligator in the middle of the road.
If any other motorist that was driving by that day, they would say the strangest thing they've ever seen in the middle of the road is this family squatting.
That is so true.
So how did you get from being a Washington, D.C. attorney, lobbyist, fundraiser to a business strategist? Where did the leap happen for you?
Where did the leap happen? Well, I've always been in strategy, so I from the very beginning days of coming out of college, and my first professional job was a professional fundraiser. I was like the youngest person in our organization. I had a book of $2 million. And of course, during that time, that was a big deal. And so, having to develop strategy and also being trained on strategy and strategic planning, I kind of just cut my teeth in that way. So as I developed my career, went to law school, a lobbyist, blah, blah, blah. When I was finished working on the Martin Luther King Memorial project, I'm like, God, this was such a big deal, huge deal in my life. What next, right? And people just started reaching out to me and saying, hey, Kerry-Ann, could you do some strategic plan with us? Can you help our board of directors do this? Or can you help my business do this? And it sort of, organically went. And I said, I'm going to do this full time. I think I'm going to bet on me. And that's how it happened.
Awesome. I love that. Bet on me. I love that you phrased it that way.
It can be a little scary, Bethany. You know how it is.
Yes. You've probably not heard my business story, so I could scare you with that one. So when I started my business, I was a single mom with 5 children, and I was homeschooling all of them while I ran my business.
Okay, so there you go.
So yeah, that was a huge leap for me to start a business and still try and do all the things.
I lift my hat off for you on that one. Wow.
I live to tell the tale. So let's talk about why small and medium-sized businesses are so important to the economy.
Well, I don't know why this is such a weird or novel thing to say, because the reality is that 2/3 of U.S. employees are hired by small and medium-sized businesses. Our economy, 90% of businesses are small and medium-sized. I mean, when you start looking at the amount of the economy that is based on small and medium-sized companies, it's significant. Yet, when you have, a situation, for instance, now where it could be, in theory, a recessionary year, there's always, sort of looking towards the larger companies. What are the larger companies doing by way of layoffs? What do the larger companies do in terms of how can we support them? And there's always some, some tax breaks, something, invested in large companies. But the majority of our economy is based on smaller companies. So I think it's really important for not only for business owners, one, to recognize the role that they play in our economy. We're holding up the economy, not just here in the US, but in other parts of the world. Sometimes it's 99% of businesses are small businesses. So I think it's important to sort of recognize the role we play, and to hold our head up and sort of put our heads, our shoulders back, and walk with that kind of reality. It also is important for us to recognize that as it relates to how we create policies and in our various states and local governments, as well as the national government, around how we support small business owners and small businesses, because it's a significant chunk of our economy. Also, too, when you start thinking about, Bethany, like, if you're trying to, increase economic growth within a nation, the best way to do it is by having more businesses start. And every large business was a small business. So yeah. If you think about it from that angle, it's vitally important, which is one of the reasons why I'm a big champion for small business, and why I feel so passionate about encouraging small business owners to build businesses that last, but also to be able to recognize that they can manage it without feeling like, they're like trying to manage some crazy tornado.
Well, and I'm going to jump in with another statistic, and I mean, don't quote me, but if memory serves, I believe that in the last 10 years, women-owned businesses have moved from about 35% to about 42%.
That is true.
Huge growth in terms of women and starting and running businesses as well.
Huge growth.
And women do tend to start things more on the retail side. There's a big chunk on the retail side and so forth.
Very true.
Running a small business has its challenges. And I've been a business owner for many years.
Yep.
And I can definitely say that I've had my share of those challenges. A big one for me was feeling isolated. Yeah. Because, like I mentioned, I was homeschooling. I had 5 children. I was doing all these other things. So I didn't have a lot of time to connect with other business owners. I was just like 18 hours a day with my head down.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I felt really lonely in the struggle. And now I preach a lot about the importance of getting out of our box and reaching out, because as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, there are so many small business owners, and we're not the only one in the journey. And having others that we can kind of share those challenges and support us in our journey is so important. Kind of find your tribe. And
absolutely Bethany. I'm a huge proponent of just finding your tribe and going with it, and look, it's not easy, because like you said, look at your life. It would have been difficult for any person, but to be able to do all that you were juggling, plus then create some space to meet others. But that feeling of loneliness is real. And it's the same way we have to always invest in our own self in every way, in our education, in our continuing learning, in our self-care, because we dull the knife if we the axe if we don't. It's the same way we have to invest in making sure that we're having conversations and have people that we can speak our language to, because it also dulls the knife if we don't.
Yeah. Well, when I was doing research on you for the show, I found a download that you offer on your website, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it because it's phenomenal. First of all, just being able to break down 8 different areas that cause chaos in a business. One of the things that I did I did a whole chapter in my recent book called The Juggle is Real, by the way.
Yeah. I love that title. The Juggle is Real. Yes.
The Juggle is Real. I did a whole chapter on reducing friction, and that is a lifestyle for me. Like, not, if something is in a cabinet in my kitchen and it's a source of, that thing, I can never find it, or, whatever, I figure out a solution so that I smooth that out. And I do that in business too. So your systems, your processes are so important, but you also got to keep them running smoothly and reduce that friction. So these 8 things are ways of reducing that chaos in your business, so you don't feel like you're going crazy and running all the time and being inefficient. And I love your first one is about if your business lacks a strong foundation, and you have some core foundations that you've identified as being important. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a lot of times folks come to me, usually when they come to me to talk about, hiring the firm, it's because they're having some sort of pain. Yeah.
Hmm.
And there's some pain happening, and there's a couple of 4 ones that primarily show up. Obviously, cash is a big one. Burnout's another big one. Can't manage your team is another one, and then obviously just can't scale. So, say someone comes to me and say, "Hey, I'm having an issue with my team," and of course, they automatically assume that it's the team, right? Well, it's the team. That's the problem. I tell them to do something, they don't do it. Can't delegate. Blah blah blah. Okay, fine. My philosophy overall, and what I experienced, and what me and my team have experienced, is that it's just like anything where, like, you go to the doctor and you're like, oh, I've got a headache, so it must be, just give me some pills and I'm like, fix it type of thing. But
Yeah.
there's usually some fundamental things that are really that could be the cause of why you're having some problems with your team. And I go basic. So underneath that fundamental area, one thing I always start with, which it bothers people because they want to go fast and quick, is what's the owner's life plan? What is the owner's life? What is your plan? How do you see your life? What do you want? And is this business right now fitting into that? Not is your life fitting into the business vision, but is your life plan strong enough, and you see how you want your life to be, and is the business vision fitting into that? And it may have fit into it 20 years ago when you started the business, but it might be a situation where right now the business vision doesn't fit into the life plan. And that's the first step I go to first. Once someone sort of says, okay, here's my life plan. Okay, the business vision does fit into the life plan. And when I talk about business vision, people are like, oh, sort of lofty ideals. What I'm talking about are 3 things. What are the values of your business? What is the purpose of your business? And what is the strategic core goal of your business? So your values, those are like, we treat people like we treat our family. Like our customers, we treat them like family. That's a belief and a value. Um, a purpose is pithy. It's not corporatese. It's not this long, thing. This is what we do. It's simply like, for our company, we're in the business of helping businesses thrive. Period. Done. Coming up with some idea of what that looks like for you. And then third would be, what is your big, hairy, audacious goal, as Jim Collins has coined, right? It's
Yes.
what is your true north? What is the place that you're trying to get the business to? That is your strategic core, your core strategic goal. And that needs to be out like, 15, 10, 20 years out, but it also needs to be very specific. There needs to be some clear direction. Once you have that together, and it definitely fits into how you want your life to be, then there's some other components that are foundational as well. So you want to take a look at what's the state of the business, meaning obviously, if you've been in business for a while, you have a business plan. So that's not really, but do you have a growth plan? What's the plan there? What's your plan to scale kind of thing, as you see it. And it has to be about you and your founder, you. And if you have co-founder, it's not about, oh, this tech company scaled, whatever in 2 years. Yeah, how do you want your growth plan to be? How do you want your exit strategy to be? Those are some of the things that are very foundational in terms of what is the state of your business. And then there's going to be 2 other components that once you have those 3 things together under the foundational area is what is your business model? Is your current business model, is it the ideal business model for your business right now? And this really takes some time thinking about what are your core competencies in the business right now? what is it? What are the, the passions right now? What is the economic engine of the business? What's really making you money in the business versus what you think is making you money in the business, right? Spending some time to really think about, is this business model that you currently have like working? Do you need to fix it? Do you need to shift it too many millimeters? Or what you think is the business model actually isn't the business model, but this over here is working. So we're going to name it something else. So that's one area. And then the last one in the foundations would be, your product formulation. So, people sometimes think like product market fit. I think product market fit is a part of that, but it's really sort of, what is the problem that you're really solving? Because, some people are like, oh, I'm having a problem with cash flow. So clearly I need to expand my sales team or do more sales training. But when you begin to look at it, you're like, well, actually, God bless you, but this product has topped where that's as far as you can sell it, right? The demand for it isn't really more than this. Now you may come on the other end of that and realize there's another need that your current customers have, and you can innovate to another product that you can then sell into, or another service. But right, so I think the product formulation aspect of the foundational stuff is something that a lot of business owners, particularly those that have been in the biz for a bit, they're like, no, this is what I've been doing. I've been doing this for whatever years. I've been selling it. My customers love it. Okay, that's fine, but you're not able to scale. So why is that? Maybe this is it, right? So those are the 5 sort of elements within the foundational areas that I really take people through. And it's not always comfortable, but so to summarize what that is, one, it's your life plan, and making sure and looking at the business vision, making sure the business vision fits into the life plan. If it doesn't, do some switching around. Don't change the life plan, change the business vision. Then you're looking at the state of your company. What is your exit strategy? You build different if you know what you're going to get, how you're going to get out of it. Are you going to give it to your kids? Are you going to sell it? What's the plan? And then the 4th one would be, how is your ideal business model? Does the current business model work? Or do you think you're in a different business than you really are, right? Mm-hmm. And then the 5th one would be your product formulation, or, sort of a more common term that people think about is sort of product market fit.
Yeah. So in Time to Thrive, we preach about planning. There seems to be a lot of resistance in small business owners to the planning process. I think one of the reasons why is, if I put it out there, if I make a goal and I don't hit the goal, that feels like failure, right? So they kind of hesitate, or they don't want to take the time to work through all that because they don't see the value in it, in writing it down. For me, it's if it's in your head, if a business owner says, well, it's up here, right? I know the plan. It's up here.
I know.
The problem with that is it will change based on your emotions.
Yes.
Or circumstances that happen that maybe cause some fear or some uncertainty. And all of a sudden you start messing with this up here. And then it quickly goes to chaos because you never really wrote it down and worked through all the elements of it. And so I call it like having safety guardrails. It keeps you in your lane.
I love that safety guardrails. Yeah. It's like you're shifting here and it bounces you back over here.
Exactly. There's some resistance when you start like deterring. And that's not to say you shouldn't take an exit now and then, but you should know why you're taking the exit, and you should understand how the exit serves you. Otherwise, you're just kind of left with, I'm not reaching what I feel like the potential is of my business, but I don't really understand why, because you have nothing that you can measure it against. So planning is so super important. And even the process of doing it is just this mental exercise that brings out things that you haven't really taken the time to think about.
That is so true, Bethany. I find, I did a talk the other day around strategic planning and how to just like demystify it, because the real issue is, you were talking about the fear of failure.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's such a big thing. Now, I've seen several statistics out there around execution, around strategic plans, right? So I've seen, the highest number I've seen is that 90% of companies don't actually execute fully their strategic plan. And then I've seen it down as far as close to more towards 50%. Nonetheless, if it's 50 or if it's 90, the reality is a lot of companies don't execute well. So for me, there is a sort of two strong value sets that I really hammer in. One is creating the plan, getting it out of your head. If it's in your head, it doesn't actually exist, right? It's
Right.
almost like we have memories that we think were true, but then if you have a couple people who were in the same room who had the same memory, who were in the same event, they would describe the event very differently. No, it was a pink room. No, it's a black room. No, it was a yellow room. So I think we can't really trust the things that we think are in our heads because oftentimes they're not really solid. So once they're out of your head and putting it on paper forces you to have the question, to purify it. Is this really where I want to take the business? Is this really our business model? Is this really a customer need? Or is this sort of like a cool little thing I can sell some cakes and that's all I'm going to do? So once you go through those exercises, it gives you some solid foundation and it gives you the certainty that a lot of people really, really want. They're afraid of failure, but they really do crave certainty. So if you can kind of get people to say, oh, look, this is going to give you some certainty. When you get confused, you can go back to this document and say, this is what my business is. It also keeps you from that whole sparkly scroll distraction thing. Yeah. But once you have that together, the execution part of it is serious. And so that fear of failure is real because the execution numbers are real, the lack of execution. But you can create systems in your business that sets you up for the win. If you have ways to track whatever the goal is, whatever the strategic objective is, from the top to the bottom, in the sense that you can look weekly, and these things that we're doing are directly connected to our core strategic goal, then you're really doing something amazing. And every week you can sort of say, okay, did we hit the goal? Yes or no? And none of this fudging stuff, is it on track or is it not on track? Is it behind or is it or not, right? And once you start getting the muscle of that, then that fear of failure thing actually goes away because you now know exactly what you need to be doing today. And your team knows what they're supposed to be doing today. And they also know that what they're doing today impacts the core strategic goal in a way that it gives them purpose and meaning.
As a business owner, a lot of people come into becoming a business owner because they're really good at one thing. They're an accountant, they're a chiropractor, they're a whatever, right? They're just really good with fashion, or they're a chef. The problem that a lot of business owners run into is what they don't realize is that they now have to develop a whole skill set that they're not necessarily that good at or even wired for. Like we have to force it. Like I do all my own bookkeeping and for 3 companies, and that just about, I'm a creative, so that I just have to tear my hair out. But I've tried outsourcing it, and it's almost more work for me to outsource it because I still have to do all the work.
Right.
So then I feel, well, I'll just plunk it in here.
Yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of those areas is marketing, which is where Time to Thrive came from, is to help teach those business owners those skills of lead generation and building relationship and affinity and understanding their brand. Leadership is another area, and you talk a little bit about that. And so what kind of leadership skills do small business owners need to have? And the thing about leadership that we need to make the point of is these aren't natural abilities, they are learned abilities. And so
thank you. Amen. Just say it again. From the back. Like I am always, oh yes, she has strong leadership skills and she's blessed with the gift of leadership. Yeah, no, she learned those skills.
Yeah,
now
right.
People pick it up over time. I was fortunate because I grew up in a home that both my parents were leaders, and leadership was an important aspect of watching them lead, and so I picked up some things sort of inherently, and then there were just some traits that I practiced because how kids are, they watch their parents and they kids do what their parents do, not what the parents say.
That's right.
I believe that that like leadership is a skill, just like learning social media.
That's right.
You practice, you learn it. There's some fundamental principles that work, and there are different leadership styles that each of us bring to the table. So I don't like this whole like mystifying of leadership. Okay, so if you realize, and back to your point, Bethany, around people, having a great skill, they put a shingle out, and then this like, but they're operating in what Michael Gerber always talks about, sort of like they're operating in the technician side of the brain, but they're not really exercising the entrepreneur muscle. So I do think that for business owners who are at that stage, you don't need any more certificates in accounting. You don't need to go to any more trainings, how to be a good chef or a good cook or, whatever it is in your business. Because, they love doing that. It's like, oh no, I need to get another thing. Like, yeah, no, you're fine. Trust. Those cakes taste real good. Leave it alone, right? But if you're going to spend some time around developing a muscle, develop the entrepreneurial side of the muscle, the manager side as well, but the entrepreneurial side. So therefore so it's entrepreneurship, not the same as leadership, but there is a crossover there. So the leadership, I would say, in terms of the skills that you really want, back to your question, what is that, what you really be focusing on? I like to think of leadership as sort of three prongs. There's leadership of one's self, the leadership of one's team, and the leadership of one's organization. And if you can begin to break those three things down, I love just bite-sized things to pay attention to. I think people get overwhelmed with a lot of data, particularly nowadays where it's all this wonderful stuff out there and in the ethos around business ownership. So thinking about leadership is simply you being able to have the capacity to be able to influence yourself or others to do a thing in order to accomplish a goal. So if you can think of yourself in sort of the smallest sense of the way, the smallest sense, the little tiniest part of leadership. So leading yourself. If you could convince yourself to make, there's that whole that wonderful general who did that wonderful speech on make your bed. That I don't know if you.
Yes, I've seen that. The military.
Right, the military. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
A graduation speech for college students. But like, if you can say, okay, I'm going to exercise that muscle of leadership and just convince myself to start making my bed. So whatever the thing is, it may not be bed making for you. It may be your own personal thing. I'm going to decide, convince myself that I am going to go to the gym or go for a walk this particular every day, or I'm going to meditate this, in the morning every day. So it's you deciding to do that. So you're leading yourself. And then when it comes to leading your team, thinking about how are you being, with leadership of team, this to me helps you to confront your own needs and desires for approval. Because oftentimes people just really want to be liked. And they don't say what needs to be said or ask the questions that you don't want to hear the answers to the questions that you're afraid to hear. Maybe your team, people sometimes think, oh, well, I'm a business owner, but they don't really think of themselves as kind of much. They're like, well, I'm just doing this thing, right? Your team is looking up to you. Regardless of how you think, it's just us, it's just a team. Your team is looking up to you. Everything you do or don't do, they are paying attention. So they're not gonna feel very comfortable being completely honest with you if they're upset that you have become quite, you're allowing John over in accounting to slack off over here, but making it difficult over here for this department to they have to toe the line. Or they're not going to tell you when they feel like you're being unfair because you're holding on to the values of the company and forcing other people to do it, but you're allowing cousin Susie to get away with whatever. So you have to sort of think of yourself, how can I really recognize that in your own world, in the ecosystem of your business, you are a leader, you are the person that people are looking to. So everything you do, every activity you do, everything you don't do is being looked on. So if you're seeing a problem in the business, it's you. It's likely you. And then the third part around is the organization. And this goes back to strategic leadership. Do you have a strategic goal for the organization? Are you pushing it forward? Are you making sure that the team has the tools in order to achieve the strategic goals? Those kinds of things, right? So it's you, it's the team, it's the organization. You do, and just if you look, it's okay to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I actually am a pretty bad leader, and I want to be better. That's fine. Be better, do better. Start small and keep it moving. But leadership is the core. If you're not a good leader, you're not going to have a good team. And if you're not going to have a good team, you're missing out on optimizing your business.
Well said. Well said. When you were talking there with regards to, letting Susie get away with this, and, it reminded me of the broken windows theory. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but Rudy Giuliani, when he was mayor of New York, set about to clean up, the reputation and so forth. And the way he did it was through the small and petty things.
Yes.
Because it sent the message that we care. We care that our streets are clean. We care that our, the pickpocket. He went after the pickpockets, the windshield wiper people who would and then hold you hostage until you paid them.
Yes.
All that kind of stuff. They went after that, and when they did, major crimes also reduced.
Went down. Yes.
And because it sent the message. And I think as organizations, when we're looking at the leadership of our organization, those little things do matter. It sends the message that all things matter, big or small. And when we care, they will care. It creates the culture.
Yeah.
One of the things,
human beings don't. This whole thing out there, like, oh, people don't want to work. That's just complete hogwash. It's not true. Humanity hasn't changed. People want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. Period. Yeah. And there are many people are very self-motivated. If you bring self-motivated people into your business, your job as the owner of the business is not actually to manage the people. It's to manage the systems that you have created once you've made sure the people are in the right places and they are given the space to do them, right? So, if you are being a bottleneck in the process for your team to do their magic, then it's on you. Most times when you sort of ask a business owner, where's the bottleneck in your business, and they'll be honest, they would say it's them. It's because people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. It's a human desire.
I was the poster child for that business owner who was the bottleneck. And the reason was it was my baby, and nobody could do anything inside my baby as well as I could. And so I micromanaged and failed to delegate, ran myself into the ground to the point of being burned out. And it took me years to move past that. I almost had to do it out of desperation rather than because I was just being so smart about changing my.
What exactly happened?
Or whatever.
I mean, what was the kicker? I'm curious. I think everybody wants to know.
Yeah, just being burned out, just being so burned out that I just couldn't do it anymore. I was one of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business.
Yes, that look at you. That's very prestigious.
Yeah, it was so great. But I can remember in one of the sessions I was in up in Babson College in Boston, and they said point blank that you need to get comfortable with things being done in your business at 80% of the way you would do it. And the whole room just audibly went, like it was, no. So I know I'm not the only business owner who feels that way.
Of course.
And I'm very lucky. I have a fantastic team. They've been with me for a long time. There's a lot of trust, and
yes.
there's some there's some traction there, some background, some,
Of
you know,
course.
so,
Yes.
and, you know, you hire well, trust your people, get over yourself.
Bethany, I'm putting on a bumper sticker. I am putting that on a bumper sticker.
Give me a good one.
Hire well, trust your people, get over yourself.
You've mentioned systems and processes a few times. So let's dig into that a little bit more, because I know that's another area. When we start our business, we kind of shoot from the hip because we're not really sure. We're figuring it out. And then a lot of business owners never really formalize those systems and processes. So they end up changing depending on who we happen to have in that role, or, you know, and honestly, every time you have to replace someone, if you haven't established those systems and processes and documented them, now you're training a whole new person on the fly.
Yes.
So it's not great. So what steps should business owners be taking to really develop the right systems and processes for their business?
I would say this can be really so daunting, right? And I think for different personality types, there are people who just love the whole, like, they love to geek out on the, you know, the thing. And then there are, like, you know, folks who are like, you've got to be kidding me. There's no way. I think a middle ground to first start would be to think about the important processes in your business right now. So these things that drive the business, meaning, how do you get leads? How do you convert leads to customers? How do you onboard those customers? And how do you fulfill what it is that you have saying, whether it's the service or the product or whatever it is?
Right.
Start there. Start with the things that are really core to the existence of your business. Then I like to do sort of process mapping with my clients. So, you know, the whole idea, like, process mapping is that official kind of, like, there are people who are like process mappers, but like those are the things, little, like the little diamond, and there's like a line, it's like a square, there's a line, a circle.
Like the old way we used to do programming.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and each of those shapes actually mean a thing, right? The diamond is like, you know, it's either go there or go there. Square, I think, is, anyway, the point is, I like to just sort of, you know, have them just tell me, okay, so how do you get customers? Now, some companies which maybe really like have several different ways they get leads, and that's fine. We'll do a whole process around all of those. Now, here's where it can get overwhelming. You're like, you mean I've got to now create a whole playbook on each of those steps? No. You find the things that are really like core, like once they've gone, say you're doing the sales one, okay, and you're like, okay, and then you have the sales conversation. The sales conversation is the most important little box on your sales process, converting a lead into a customer, right? So start with the sales conversation. Script that, or whatever it is, whether it's just like, you know, you ask this question, you make sure you answer these questions, or if you have like a qualifying section to your sales process, like you have like a sales assistant who's just doing the qualifying conversations, create a process for that, like a scripting for that. And then when you move them to the sales conversation, do that. So those are two really important things that if you had that alone, would be great. Now, of course, we want to fill in the gaps as you go along. But what I'm saying is focus on the things that if they were in a process and written out, and there's a good, strong playbook for it, it would advance, it would take off some of the work off of you or whoever is the one doing it. And if that person left, someone could go straight to that script and have a sales conversation with someone based on the script. Even though maybe they're like, you know, maybe another step, and that's like, oh, you know, follow up after 3 days or follow up after whatever. Maybe there's no scripting around that, but you can figure out how to follow up with someone for 3 days. But as time goes on, you build it in more. And this is something too. You don't need to do this yourself. This is a group project. We all hated group projects in school. But it's a group project. The people who are doing it on a day-to-day can do it real fast, because they've been doing it every day. And so all they got to do is just type it in. And there's some really wonderful, wonderful software now out there that people can use. Yes, okay, I'm all a big fan of putting a nice little, Google Doc up in there and keep it moving. But, like there's software like Trainual, which is like train UL, like a manual, but Trainual. That's a great tool because they have like can have the processes connected to your org chart, so people own it. You can put GIFs in there, you can do videos in there, you can have time. So there's a way to gamify it a bit and make it really great. And it's one place that people can go to. But to get started, if you're thinking, you have got to be kidding me, Bethany, you really want me to start doing this, and I've been running this business for 15 years. Start with the processes that really have a strong impact on your business. Start there first. Only create playbooks or scripts or more detailed things on the things in the process that a person wouldn't just inherently know to do. And then fill in the gaps as time goes on and make it a group project. Basically, if people in accounting, have them create the accounting process because they're the ones doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And they know. And also, one of the things that I think is really great now than back in the day when people would print it out in binders and they'd put it somewhere and people have to, is now if you have it in the software, people can go and edit it. Obviously, you have to have a process for what allows for editing something, right? You don't want to have everyone willy-nilly going and editing processes, then it doesn't make sense as a process. But if there's some friction on something, they're like, yeah, this is how we did it. And when I put it in the manual, or when I put it in the operating procedure, it made sense. But now, it's actually causing more friction. You create some things, some processes and rules in the company that says, okay, maybe all the department heads can change the process, but they can change it without having to come to whatever the chief operating the COO, so that it's more agile. What we don't want it to do is to restrict you. So if it is causing some friction, if for some reason when you said, hey, this sales script worked a year ago, but it's not working now, it's okay to change it, but don't change it willy-nilly. Let there be some thought around changing, and not just because the person doesn't want to do it, right? Because sometimes you're like, oh, well, I have my own way of doing things. No, well, this is the way we do it here in the company because blah, blah, blah.
Well, I know we're running out of time. But I want to make sure that we talk about this last one. I've heard people say that mindset is about 90% of your success. 10% is like how you do all the other things that we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what study that's based on. I've just heard that statistic, but it rings true to me because I just know how much a poor mindset has held me back at times, and how much a great mindset or the right mindset, the right perspective, the right focus has just shot me forward. Can you just speak to mindset a little bit? Because I know that's something you feel is important as well.
I completely agree. I've heard the 90-10, I've heard 80-20, but it's high, it's significant. And I like to make sure that the owner for sure has some habits in their lives that creates a success mindset, a foundational success mindset in their life, and being able to create success mindset in their team. Because even if they have a success mindset and they're not giving their team the tools to be able to look, it's the same thing like leadership. You got to learn it. Nowadays, I think was way better off than back in the day when I was growing up, and people weren't talking about mindset as much. But so you have a lot of things out there that people can do. But the thing is, I think too, people know about mindset, but they don't actually know how to do mindset, how to change their mindset. So one thing I first would try to do is recognize that we have a conscious mind and we have a subconscious mind. And that is just, fact. It's not like wonky science or anything like that, and and our subconscious mind is what really, a lot of the things that we do, and most of the things that we do, is coming from the subconscious mind. Our hearts are beating from that, right? When we have a cut, it's where all the phagocytes go to do the healing of the scabs, and then like the skin and whatever. You're not consciously actually healing the cut and the scrape you had, right? Your body's just doing that because there is another part of your mind that's making that happen. So if you can recognize that to be true, then it's around like changing your mind around the things that you think are possible. So the first step really is to recognize that there's a paradigm that you're operating under. You made some belief, you created some beliefs about things that, from when you were young, that we make these really, ideas around life when we're young, they never make sense. But
Yeah.
we were young, so we created ideas. So you have some strong beliefs around who you are, what you're capable of, and that's stuck in the subconscious. And so you're now operating from that space. So the first step is really to just kind of get to a place where you can begin to change the way that you see yourself. Bob Proctor used to always say, before he passed away, God rest his soul, that you can't out earn your self image. And this isn't about like, oh, my self esteem, blah, blah, blah. No, how you see yourself, your self image, you cannot out earn that. So if you have all kinds of, strategic objectives to be the next, Apple, and or Amazon, or whatever the next thing is, if you have a mindset that puts you in a different place as someone who doesn't deserve that, you don't matter, whatever the thing is, then it's difficult to do that. So a part of this is training your subconscious to begin to see yourself a certain way. One strategy is literally to write down who you are, who you want to be, who you need to be in order to be the person. I have in my phone an image of a woman, of a businesswoman, and she's looking all, fantastic, and she's like standing with little sunglasses, and she's leading a team, and she's by a fantastic pool, where, because, I'm not about the office life, I'm about the pool life. And and she's and I see that image all the time, and I have in there, I am the owner of, and it tells me who I am. So I look at that every single day just to remind myself. So when I have a poor sales conversation, or I have a difficult conversation with team, or something that will bring me a bit down, where I'm like, oh man, maybe I'm not meant for this, I go back to that. No, that's who I am. That kick-ass woman, that's who I am. So therefore, I'm going to behave accordingly. If you do that for your team, help them to create. My brother owns a healthcare practice up in Georgia, and he's had it now for about, I guess, 10 years. It is just gangbusters growing. Well, what I love about it is that his team, when they're doing their annual strategic plan, it's not just about the business, Bethany. He has them do personal team goals for their own lives, their own personal lives. He allows for his executive strategist to come in and work with his team and help them to be able to grow as well. Because if everyone rises, the water rises. If the water rises, everyone rises. So you do that for yourself. You do that for your team. Oh my goodness, what are you talking about? And a lot of businesses are like, oh, well, I'm building my team up, and maybe they might leave me and start their own business, or start their own thing, or go get a better job. I'm like, really? Is that the question we're asking? Build your team up. They'll be loyal. They'll stay with you. So, really, and if they do move on, they're moving on because you've built them up and you've contributed to the world. So build your always have a success mindset as the company. This is what we do. that BHAG we have over there is not just for show, because we believe we can get there and really work and do the work. Just do the work. No one gets a chance to grow up without having some childhood trauma. And when I use the word trauma, be like, oh, it's just a heavy word. I'm not talking about, I mean, some people have different trauma, but only human beings, only imperfect human beings raise human beings. So they're going to have some mistakes they're going to use. Go and work on yourself. Do the work, find a therapist, work on it, heal, and focus, because you are going to always hit the thing. You're going to hit a barrier, and then you stretch, and then you go to the next thing. There's going to be another barrier. You're going to have to stretch. But in the end, you can look back and be like, man, 5 years ago, if this would have happened, I would have like shrunk and gone in the closet and pulled the covers over my head. Now look at me, right? So I believe in mindset. I believe in making it work and realizing it's not impossible. Sometimes you can just do some exercises. Sometimes you might need to get a professional therapist to tease out some childhood stuff. It's fine. We all get there. There's no shame there. Just make it work and get the healing.
Well, I think the overall theme here for today, if I had to pick one, is you are the ceiling for your business. And whether it's mindset or your leadership skills or your marketing skills, your business is only going to grow as much as you're willing to commit to your own growth.
Exactly.
And so that means we have to work on our business every day, not just in our business.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap up here, why don't you share a little bit about where people can find you, find out more about you, anything you want to share? Go ahead.
I'm always excited to connect with people, particularly business owners, because I mean, I think that we're a cool bunch of people in the world. So definitely I'm on all the social media locations, LinkedIn primarily, and of course Instagram and Facebook and such, and Twitter. And so, you can definitely reach out to me there. The website for my company is trafalgarstrategies.co. It's the CO, not the COM. So it's trafalgarstrategies.co. You can find me there and learn more about, my company and such. And, I do have a PDF. If someone it feels like they, are having some of the challenges that you and I talked about, and they feel a bit of chaos in their company. As you mentioned, I do have a free PDF that people can go to and sign up for, and an easy URL they can get it to is nobusinesschaos.com. And so it's just really helps you sort of identify what are some of the foundational problems that cause chaos, and gives you some ideas on how to fix it. So yeah, that's the ways that you can reach me. But I'm just really so happy to have been able to have this conversation with you, Bethany.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, Kerry-Ann. I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all of your wisdom and elevating our audience to the next level in their knowledge base. And I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.